So, Bobby, one of the things that has not been spoken of much during the course of this campaign, and there's a lot of reasons for this, obviously, is the issues of the environment and global warming. We have had I think it's the 16th most record-breaking hottest month was August. We have seen each month over the past 16 top the month before in terms of year over year historically as to its hottest month. Just this week, Donald Trump tapped a high-profile climate change denier to lead his administration team efforts for the Environmental Protection Agency. These are underreported stories because, to a certain extent, I think because the Clinton campaign for a long time and the media, largely speaking, and not without reason, has portrayed Donald Trump as sui generis and, a fascistic threat, which may be true, but on top of that, he's also a climate change denier who's very much like the rest of the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's true. And just as a footnote, Gary Johnson, who, of course, is the Libertarian presidential nominee, said on Sunday that to George Stephanopoulos that we might have to move to colonize other worlds in order to survive. In fact, he didn't say we might have to. He said, let's face it, we're going to have to. That was his answer to global warming. Trump's answer, as you point out, is to say that it's a hoax, that it doesn't exist, that he is going to dismantle the legislation and the regulations that limit carbon, that he is going to walk away from the Paris Accords. He has campaigned in front of oil industry convocations and promised them the world, and it's and meanwhile, as you said, we've had the hottest summer on record. This year has been the hottest year, according to recent reports, and according to Michael Mann, 100,000 years. So we're seeing these historic heights in climate. We're seeing the Americans for Prosperity just released a report showing that we're losing tens of billions of dollars a year because of extreme weather caused by climate change. And yet, we have a presidential candidate who is the only other country in the world that is as radical as Trump about climate change is Russia, is Putin. Who, Putin believes that climate change will actually help the Russians. They're one of the biggest oil producers in the world, and they got a lot of land that he believes is under ice and will be freed up, and they'll have shorter winters there. Trump and Putin are aligned on this issue, but it's not a good thing for the United States.
It's fascinating because from Putin's perspective, global climate change will wreak havoc on the rest of the world as opposed to Russian-controlled territories, I guess. And this is, who's to know if they share, a deeper, whether that's a coincidence or not that Trump thinks it's a hoax. I suspect it's more just because this is what happens to appeal to the Republican Party. But a lot of people that I hear about, on the left who complain about or who refuse to entertain the idea of voting for Hillary Clinton talk about her promotion of fracking. And the fact is that her proposals that she's offered, whether or not she can institute those, but whether or not, if she has the ability to seat a fifth justice on the Supreme Court, we're going to see the EPA begin to be able to regulate fracking in the way that President Obama has proposed. But
it's not just, Sam, the Supreme Court is important for the fracking regulations. It's absolutely critical important for the regulation of carbon. and for the adoption of the Paris Accords, because, as you know, there's 20 states that have sued the federal government to block the compliance with Obama's compliance with a compliance plan with the Paris Accords. The Supreme Court has blocked any efforts to enforce compliance until the case is decided. And it's not going to be decided as long as there's an even split among the justices. Right. So we have to wait until a new justice is appointed, and that new justice is either going to be appointed by Donald Trump, who, Michael Mann did a great article this week about the 10 worst climate deniers in the world, most damaging, most destructive, and Donald Trump is number one. So to elect him president, allow him to appoint a Supreme Court justice who is going to decide these pending cases that are held up behind the logjam. Plus, Trump isn't just going to destroy the climate, but he's also promised last week when he spoke to the oil industry, the shale gas industry, he promised that he would get rid of the Clean Water Act. So he's just going to open the floodgates to every kind of pollution and have, Trump's prosperity is going to be pollution-based prosperity, which is just deficit spending. It's a way of loading the cost of our generation's prosperity onto the backs of our children. It's a way of enriching a few billionaires by impoverishing other Americans and destroying the economic prospects and the quality of life of future generations.
One of the things I found very amusing was, amusing in a really sort of dark way, I guess. I think he was in Pennsylvania last week, promising coal miners that he was going to bring back coal, and he was going to unleash fracking. And energy experts just laughed at this.
Those are two industries that do not like each other.
Well, of course. I mean, this is sort of the disturbing thing about the era of post-truth politics we live in. For every dollar that is invested in coal, it is done at the expense of fracking, and vice versa. Every dollar that fracking becomes much less expensive drives coal out of business. And the idea that he could say this with a straight face is either indicative of the fact that he's a great liar, or he just has no idea what he's talking about.
I would say that it's both. When he spoke to the shale gas industry last week at the Shale Insight East Coast Conference, Shale Insight 2016 in Pittsburgh.
Bobby, wait, you know what? Let's take a break. When we come back, I want you to talk about his talk to the shale industry. We got to take a quick break. Sam Seder, Bobby Kennedy, Ring of Fire Radio.